Welcome everybody to our 2016 State of the Heart. And we have a group of panelists here to discuss this with us. First, let me introduce you to Tom. And Tom is actually the researcher who did the most of the analysis for State of the Heart. So if we have hard questions, those go to Tom.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here and share this huge research project, global, and so interesting for me to see and discuss it with you to get insight and perspectives.
And Tom, we have 126 countries represented in this research?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so it's really an incredible opportunity to look at data from a very wide perspective in the world. And Ilaria is one of our program managers who works on supporting and building our network. And Ilaria is based in Italy. And Ilaria, would you say hello?
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me in this panel list. And I'm really thrilled to join with all of you the results of this research that is really amazing. Thank you.
And Jane is here from Dubai. She's our regional network director for a third of the world, for Middle East, Africa, and India.
I think it's actually half the world, Josh. Population-wise.
Population-wise.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. And yeah, hi from Dubai.
Hi
and,
from half of the
I'm
world.
really excited about the research.
Maria is our regional network director for Europe.
Hello, everybody. I'm here located in Austria, a regional network director for Europe. I'm very excited to hear more about the State of the Heart 2016 and the discussions and the insight we get.
I would like to start with the bad news. Despite the work that all of you on this webinar are doing to practice and share emotional intelligence, we have a pretty steady downward trend in the world. And again, we're looking at data here from 126 countries. This is a randomized global sample from a very large data set.
I mean, for me, Josh, it's just a visual representation of the stress and the chaos that we find ourselves in right now. And it also screams, hey, we've got a lot more work to do.
Yeah, the thing that it's pretty amazing is that it's a steady process. It's from 2011. It keeps going at the same pace, basically. It keeps going down. So there must be some kind of trend of the way, things are going worldwide that is causing this, not paying too much attention, not enough attention on this topic, very important topic.
I mean, my thoughts here were just the change that we face constantly. It's moving faster and faster. And that might also be an implication, the way how we deal with that change. That causes, like Jane said, stress. Yeah. And the way we deal it and how we apply our emotional intelligence skills.
Yeah. I mean, we see other data. People are more lonely than ever before. Stress is going up. People are disconnected. Despite all the social media and ways we have of connecting, people feel disconnected. And in that pressure of the complexity and the challenge, it's almost like the waves are getting bigger. And I think the ship is getting bigger too. I mean, we know if you go to 6seconds.org and you scroll down, you can see that we have over 2 million people just in our network practicing emotional intelligence. So the ship is getting bigger, but I think that the waves are getting bigger faster. And
Josh, when I see this data, also I don't know why, but probably because it is inside me. I also think of an increase in fear. I don't know if we had the data from 2001 on. I don't know if something changed from that moment on. So the pushing of terrorism everywhere. So a lot of fear is coming up these years. the last years. And so I think that when you wrote in the state of the art, the emotional volatility that we are experiencing, I think that fear also, together with a lack of empathy and others that we will see in the next slides. But I don't know. I feel that even fear is something that we have to take into account.
I think that's a really good point, Ilaria, because fear, is the message from fear is to protect. And if we're protecting, we tend to turn inwards. So maybe our focus is more inwards than externally. Interesting.
So Miguel in the chat wrote, we tend to live in more of a fight or flight syndrome and or freeze. And I think that's a really important implication. We know that skills of emotional intelligence help people to be more aware, to be more careful, to be more purposeful. And so as EQ is going down, what it means in the world is that people are less aware, they're less intentional, they're less purposeful. They're, in other words, more reactive. And if we look at the specific competencies that are going down, one of them is that is empathy. We know that people are increasingly disconnected. Tom, could you just explain? We had a couple of people ask about the data set.
Yeah.
What is the sample size, where it's taken from, how is the data determined? Could you share a little bit about that?
So as Andrew just said right now, the data comes from the SAY assessment. The SAY assessment, for those who don't know, is our 6 seconds emotional intelligence assessment. And we have a very huge database to compare different regions of the world and different years. Random sampling methodology in order to get a stable sample that would allow us to compare different subgroups of age and gender and from different countries. So the final sample has 12,804 people that allowed us to make comparisons with among all those years and regions. And also in this chart that we can see from 2011, we also took into consideration the previous state of the art to see how the previous trend was unfolding in this new study.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah. For people who are watching this recording later, and if you didn't sign up, you just go to 6sec.org/SOH for State of the Heart, and you can download the report, or you can just type into our search State of the Heart and download the report. In the SAY assessment, we have 2 questionnaires. We have one questionnaire about emotional intelligence, and the other questionnaire about what we call outcomes or success factors. And what we can see here is very, very small increases in a couple of these outcomes and pretty substantial decreases. This is in the last 2 years.
I think this just aligns exactly with what we said on the previous slide, Josh. The stress, the complexity, the fear is impacting our health and our connections. But it's interesting to see that even though they're very small, influence and decision is going up.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, if we could have better decision making, it could really change the direction of the problem.
Yeah. I mean, the increase in decision making is negligible. So
yeah. But since everything is declining, even a very small increase, it means that it's stable, and it's a very good news if everything is going down at least 2%.
Yeah. We also look at these talents. We call them brain apps or brain talents, which are these unique capabilities that people have based on their assessment. We're able to understand something about these capabilities from this really interesting research process that we did. We looked at thousands of comments about high performers and what is it that made them high performers, and we linked that to the emotional intelligence data to derive these 18 talents. And as you can see, 3 of the talents are going up. Well, the 3 talents that actually increased, these are the only 3 that increased. The other 3 are the 3 that had the biggest declines. And of course, it's very related to what we've just been talking about. But what is the implication of this if people are less able to collaborate, they're less able to be proactive, and they're less able to handle risk and complexity? What does that do?
To me, it's interesting that those links very well with the previous slide of the outcomes, because if you see like the community is going down and collaboration is going down, health is going down and risk tolerance is going down, so probably these complexities causing us, like stress for sure. And reflection and adaptability going up, it means that our decision making is improving a little bit.
And I find it very interesting what Ilaria said before about fear related to the previous slides. Fear and focus more inwards than externally. That's why the risk, my screen said, the risk tolerance decreased quite heavily.
Yeah.
And of course that causes stagnation. I mean, of course, if we exaggerate now, I mean, no risk is no moving forward and no change.
I also think, when I look at the problems that we face in the world, I don't think there are very many of them that we can solve without a lot of collaboration and proactivity and risk tolerance. I mean, we have really serious issues like climate change and increased polarization in societies, and if we can't collaborate, how are we going to solve those problems?
Yep.
And then if we just sort of sit back and not be proactive and say, okay, well, I hope somebody does something about the state of the world.
Yeah. Another interesting thing is that adaptability and reflection are both on the evaluative side. And so it looks like we are less ready to take action and more kind of thinking and assessing things. And so this proactivity going down, it's a very nice link to that.
But again, that goes back to what Laria was saying earlier. If people are closing inwards, if they're fearful, they're going to, spend more time in that evaluative state rather than being innovative and jumping in. We can see their risk tolerance right down, whereas adaptability and reflection have gone up. Maybe design has gone up as well because people are designing more ways of staying, but not doing. Staying safe, but not actually doing it.
And the good news about adaptability, of course, is that adaptability in this model is very much about perspective taking. It's very much about being able to, as Tom said, evaluate and stop and say, okay, well, wait a minute. Maybe there's a different perspective. And we certainly don't see that, in discussions on the internet, right? We don't see a lot of adaptability. No. But we really need it. We really need people to be able to look at the way things are and say, wait a minute, what are some other ways of understanding this? What are some other perspectives that I could consider?
Yeah, and the only thing that I would add is that connected to collaboration is that probably despite what we said about social networks, that there are a lot of social networks, we all communicate through also Facebook and other things, but we lost a sense of community, I think. The sense of community. So to solve problems, we have to find a new way of feeling the community, because otherwise we cannot support each other and all these big issues that we have, as you said, Joshua, climate change or the war, everything. I mean, through social network, we are connected in a way, but community maybe means something different, and we have to work on this.
So in our success model, there's two relationship components. One is network, and the other is community. And it's community that's the one that's gone down the most. Network is maybe more sustained by LinkedIn, or by our business networks. Community is more personal. Okay. Let's go to killer apps. This is really interesting. Tom, would you explain how we identified that these are the 3 killer apps and what that means?
Yes. So basically on our assessment, as probably many of you know already, we have the part that is about the success factor that we can see on our right part of the screen. And basically we were able to link those success factor with our model, and in this specific case with our talents. And we call them apps as well. And a way to do that was through a linear multiple regression analysis. This analysis can give us an idea of how much of those success factor can be explained by some of those apps. And those three are the ones that have the biggest correlation with the success factors. In particular, entrepreneurship is the one that has the most impact on all of those factors, and it's 54%. So more than half of the result on those success factors is explained by entrepreneurship. That's pretty amazing.
So if you think about, if you want those things on the right,
Mm-hmm.
then any one of these things on the left is going to be a really good pathway for you to develop those things on the right.
Yes.
And if in your business or your school or your community, you want those things on the right, then teaching and supporting and developing the things on the left is going to be key.
An interesting thing too that I would like to add is that, as you can see, there are three different ones, and each one of those has a percentage next to it. This means that there is not just one way to reach success. Anyone can have a different style of acting and reflecting, and those three are both very good ways to improve success factors.
But the three in combination are hugely powerful, because you're not only seeing the vision and imagining ways to get there, you're then modeling it out in terms of finding the paths. Definitely. So the three together are amazingly powerful.
Yeah, if some of us have all those three on these top six, very good. Yeah.
So I'll just mention something about the colors. Many of you are familiar with the 6 seconds model. And if you're familiar with the 6 seconds model, then you know those colors you recognize as our kind of color code. The blue apps have to do with focus and data and awareness. And the red apps have to do with being more intentional, being more careful in our choices, being less reactive and kind of more handling of our emotions in a more of a smooth way, more agile. And the green ones have to do with the future and the big why. And that color code from the 6 seconds model applies in these apps as well. And it's quite interesting to me. And this is, it's not something that we designed. It just happened in the analysis that we got one of each of those three colors as the killer apps. So in other words, there's a pathway to take that's a kind of data-driven pathway. It's about awareness, about tuning in and figuring out, how do we think about this and how do we think about this? And there's a pathway that has to do with our choices that we're making and how we're reacting and responding and feeling and choosing to feel, the red one. And then there's a pathway that's about vision and purpose and where we're going. And in our definition of entrepreneurship, there's this component about seeing the vision, seeing the practical steps to reach that vision, and bringing others along. That component of empathy is also in entrepreneurship. What's your favorite one of these talents?
My favorite one is modeling.
Tom, there's a person in chat who is asking what's modeling.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that could be a good chance to explain it. Basically, modeling is a way of, we live in a world full of data and information. So modeling is a way of organizing those information and linking the pieces together, and understanding what could be the link to drive you on your decision making, understanding how all those pieces could unfold and how could you reach your goal in many different ways.
So it's like data modeling. And these puzzle pieces as a symbol, like, okay, well, this piece can go here, this piece can go here. Well, what about this piece? What about this piece? And so it's really a very logical process. But of course, when we talk about a logical process, we're talking about rational data as well as emotional data.
Yeah, there is a lot of pattern recognition, Miguel, as you were asking.
My favorite one is imagination. And because I'm going back to what I said before, we cannot have imagination when we are afraid of something. Imagination is to be free of thinking of something new or a better future. And so for me, I really wish the world to have this kind of talent more developed. Because when you imagine, as someone sang in the past, John Lennon, imagine, it's really something powerful, really powerful. So I hope.
And we can't create change unless we can imagine it, right?
Exactly.
It's about seeing a possibility that doesn't exist right now. It's seeing something that doesn't, it's not there. We're just looking around saying, well, where's my path? Somebody show me the path. Then we're stuck in that proactivity problem. Somebody want to speak for entrepreneurship? Jane?
Well, this is my favorite talent. Because entrepreneurship is about seeing the vision and enrolling people to get there. And as we can see, it accounts for 54% of success in all those areas. And I love the three in combination, because that entrepreneurship is about seeing the vision, enrolling people. Imagination is, imagining ways and possibilities. And then modeling is to actually sift through all that data and find the correct way of getting there. So as I said earlier, I think the three in combination are incredibly powerful. But entrepreneurship, can you get there on your own? No, you can't. You need to enroll people, and you need to be able to paint a vision of the future that will capture their minds and their imaginations. So I can understand why it's up there, because entrepreneurship leads to not just you yourself, it's you and others. And the power, the collective power, then I think reflects on the outcomes.
In Inside Change, we talked about feeling the vision. Right? And it's not enough to know it intellectually. If we feel the vision, then we can actually enroll people in that vision. And that's so connected with what you're talking about.
And I think it's the feeling of the vision that creates the inspiration. Which is what entrepreneurship's about.
And that's what always I remember, Josh, you mentioned that metaphor with the arch. If you don't know where to point, and it depends with what emotions the arch is filled in order to hit the target. And that metaphor comes to my mind back here again. It needs the action, but it needs to be filled, and you need to know where the imagination, where to point, where to aim for which target, which direction.
Like an arrow?
Yeah. Maybe I don't find the right vocabularies now, but you mentioned an arrow. That's it.
We're translating from.
I'm translating from German. I saw in your face something was not.
Yeah, the arrow, right? So
I perfectly understood. I didn't
you have a lot of imagination.
The European translation.
Very clear, crystal clear.
Yeah, so I mean, I do a little tiny bit of archery. I just like my son and I play around in our backyard, and it's interesting. The arrow goes where you're aiming, right? And you have
You're
to.
Good enough.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly so. Otherwise, we've got a problem.
You have to see that target, but then you need the energy. And when you draw your bow, you're adding energy to that arrow, and then you release it. And the way you release it is so important, because if you're like using too much force when you release it, it doesn't work. It's about really releasing, letting go. And I think it's a really beautiful metaphor about emotional intelligence. We need to aim, and we need to be purposeful, and we need to have energy, but we also need to recognize we're not in control. We put things forward, and we can take our best possible choices and then let it go into the world smoothly. Well, let's go to global talents. I'm really excited about this. One of the things that, so just in case it's not obvious from the slide, we divided the world into 3 vertical slices. So all of the Americas, all of Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and all of Asia Pacific. And we looked at what are the top talents in that region and what are the lowest talents in that region. And one of the things that I was really excited by about this is look at how different the top talents are around the world. And we see, like, if we could just get like some people from each of these regions to work together, look what would happen. We'd have this incredible array.
And some companies are doing that, diversity.
Yeah. I also noticed that in some places, like in the Americas, one of the lowest talents, reflection, commitment, and adaptability, those are the highest talents in EMEA and APAC. What else are people noticing? Jane, you have, in your region of the world, you have a lot of green top talents.
Yeah. But there's the proactivity, there's the doing, there's the commitment, which is tenacity, staying fixed on the problems. But where's everybody going?
Interesting.
And that design being one of the lowest,
Yeah.
design is about being able to sort of, we talked about modeling as being...
Design the pathways, yeah.
Modeling is kind of seeing that data. Design is about actually going, okay, well, we can...
Are people, it's going recognizing patterns actually, are people just constantly jumping in and solving problems in exactly the same way, time and time and time again, and wonder why, hey, we're getting the same results. We're not getting anywhere because there is a complete lack of vision, which I don't think speaks for Dubai and the UAE. We have to say it's EMEA. Because, of course, our Sheikh Mohammed is a great visionary. But, hey, that's what's showing up from this.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that it's interesting is that all 3 of those are on the practical side of our model in the
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Practical and idealistic. So.
Yeah. So people are living in the here and now. Are they ostriches with their heads in the sand, just keep on doing same old, and not knowing where they're going? And that is seriously concerning, given the state of. I'll exclude Europe, Maria, but actually include Europe. But
no, I see Europe very much in there. I'm glad to finish your.
But someone needs to find solutions for this region, and they're not going to find them by doing the same old.
Now, problem solving does involve. I mean, problem solving does involve that kind of like, well, where are we trying to go? It's not. It's not the vision maybe that you're talking about that would be so needed, but it is. It's not just here and now. When we get into problem solving, we are trying to say, okay, what's the practical step? What's my practical next step?
Exactly.
So where's the vision?
But so, Josh, I'm looking at the lower line there. And, if you look at adaptability, how are we solving problems?
And what I see when I look at that also from the European perspective, it's amazing how it really reflects the situation in Europe as well, the political situation. And it's more about solving urgent problems and not important problems. That's what I'm seeing there.
Nice to put, Maria. Good one.
And adaptability, that's a big topic where it's definitely in the lower end.
And then in Asia Pacific, the top strength, adaptability. By the way, these are in order. So the left one in each row is the top one.
Okay.
So adaptability, top strength in Asia Pacific. I mean, maybe it follows a kind of, in some ways, a cultural stereotype, but here's this region of the world where people's greatest talent in this set of talents is being able to say, well, wait a minute, let's look at this in different ways. Let me understand this I don't need to stay stuck in my way of thinking. And let's pause and think about it, and then let's move forward. Our team in Japan talks about, in Japan, I think that set is so important. Like, you don't want to, you want to make sure you understand and figure it out, and then take the steps forward with that design. It's a very thoughtful approach. But on the other side, we see maybe a lack of imagination and being able to consider, well, is there a totally different way to think about this?
Yeah, I lived in the EMEA region for like all my life, and now I'm living in Ammer, and I totally see the adaptability not being there most of the times. Like this way of like stubbornness and pride, and
we're right. We know the answer.
Way, right? And fascinating.
Yes, indeed. And then you look at, if you think of the top 3 APAC talents, I think there's a huge cultural influence in those, Josh. I know you were mentioning stereotyping, but just the more respectful and open to other people's perspectives that I see in that region. But what I'm finding very curious is I'm looking at the top 3 there, and I'm looking at the bottom 3 in Europe and Middle East and Africa.
Yes. Well, it's a good thing.
What does that say about culture and respect?
It's a good thing that your region, Jane, includes India, so you can bring these two together.
Can I have some of those? Yeah, over here. Yes, please.
Well, the other piece in terms of the global perspective is the emotional intelligence competencies. Not a huge difference. You can see the number scale on the left. This is obviously magnified to accentuate the differences. But we see some different emotional intelligence competencies. And many people on the webinar won't be familiar with those labels across the bottom. I don't think we should talk about all of them. But one of the lowest in the Americas is applied consequential thinking, which is about that pausing to evaluate. It's about looking before you leap, both from a logical perspective and from an emotional perspective. And interestingly, that's by far the highest in APAC.
But I think that ties straight back into the talents we've been discussing, Josh.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That pausing before acting, and considering your olders, your betters, the community, etc., etc.
Yeah. And then in the exercise increase, the EIM is engage intrinsic motivation, and the lowest one in APAC. And what that suggests is maybe motivation. People are looking for motivation from the outside instead of creating the motivation from inside. And then look at EMEA in intrinsic motivation. This huge strength of saying, I'm going to figure out what's important to do, and I'm going to do it because it's important to me. I don't need to wait for somebody else to tell me.
And it is, in a way, even if it's a positive concept, of course, it's engagement and the motivation, but it's also a self-centered, in this case, probably self-centered way of seeing life, of approaching life. I know what is important to me, and I pursue that in my life. That's why community probably, and in our region, at least it's so, it's low and probably.
Well, and then we have optimism, exercise optimism. And this is, again, this is almost a cliche, this, in the Americas, this like,
have a nice day.
we can do it.
I feel good.
But of course, optimism is about, it's not just about, everything's fine. Optimism is
it's the American dream, actually, is the possibilities. It's to see possibilities, actually. That's why your country is actually always pursued this. And this is a very positive trait, I think. And and we should learn this, to see alternatives, even when you are stuck.
Yeah.
So sorry for interrupting.
No, thank you. And just to clarify again, the blue line, AMER, is all the way from northern Canada all the way to the tip of South America, and so a lot of data from Brazil and Colombia and Mexico and Canada as well as the U.S. But it's quite interesting to me that that this region of the world, tops emotional intelligence, strength, optimism.
Yeah, one thing that I'd like to add too is that we saw it on one of the first slides that EQ is declining worldwide, but one of the regions that is declining the most is the Americas.
Yeah.
So this gap is probably reducing.
Yeah.
Among those different.
Well, we have to talk about this one because it's everybody's favorite topic, and we're running out of time. Men and women, females in red, males in blue, and this is people. I mean, it's so surprising to me. Yes, in fact, women and men have opposite strengths when we look at it from this global data set perspective.
But if we analyze each of them, Josh, I mean, every time I run a course and I analyze this with a group, it all makes sense. And I think the underlying thing is, hey, we need each other.
Yeah. And I want to talk about this applied consequential thinking piece for a minute. So Ms. Average, if there's such a thing, I've never met her, but Ms. Average, her highest strength is going to be applied consequential thinking. And what that means is she pauses to evaluate before she jumps in. She wants to look at the implications of the choices, both rationally and emotionally. This causes her to be less reactive. It causes her to be more careful, causes her to slow down a little bit, which has huge benefits as well as costs. Whereas Mr. Average, that's his lowest. Go, Jane.
But don't you think that's also got to do with the number of balls people are juggling in the air, Josh? For most of us women, we have numerous balls. So we have to consider, the children, the household, the job, the school, whatever. Whereas men, a lot of men, have the luxury of being more single focused, and the little woman at home takes care of all the rest. So when it comes to applying consequential thinking, women are flexing those muscles a lot more than men, in my opinion.
Thank you, Jane. You're just supporting my thoughts and confirming them.
And probably
because we're right.
Yes.
I'm just going to be quiet.
I just want to support the male part and saying, we have very good navigating emotion, so we are able to remain calm.
Yes, we can hear this, and
we can hear this, and we're fine.
It's always easier to remain calm when you're from the observer perspective.
But it's true that females our role, innate role, is to take care of someone or something. And when you want to take care of something, you want to give care, you pay attention to consequences and you assess everything because you care. When you care, you cannot jump. You are conservative. You're not, because of your children, because of your family, because of the world. So we usually care about a lot of things. And that's why we are maybe more conservative in this sense. So as you said, there are pros and cons of this.
Nice perspective.
And in a world where we have really serious consequences for the choices that we're making, we really need more consequential thinking. We're running out of time. Just one more point about this is to notice where these two lines come together is in increasing empathy, where we have really Ms. Average and Mr. Average meet there. Okay, we had a little technical difficulty, and so I'm just recording the ending of the webinar so that you have it on the recording. And this is a final piece of data in the webinar that we want to share. As we've talked about before, there's two parts of the assessment. there's a success scale, and that's the effectiveness, relationships, well-being, and quality of life. And then there's the emotional intelligence scale, which tells us about the emotional intelligence competencies and also the brain talents and brain style. And each of these, moves from low to high. So the question is, what does it take to be in that high zone in the success factor overall? And to what degree is emotional intelligence useful? So we looked at emotional intelligence simply as below average and above average. And what we found is that if you are above average on emotional intelligence, you're 43 times as likely to be in that high performance zone in the success factors. And just to put that into context, people who smoke are approximately 8 times as likely to get cancer. So when we see that, high EQ makes you 43 times as likely to be in that high success zone, what that says is it's essentially a requirement that if you want to do well in those outcomes that I mentioned, all 4 of them combined, you need emotional intelligence. And maybe in the context of the challenges that we've been talking about today, emotional intelligence is even more important than ever. So I encourage you to go and get the full State of the Heart report. It's available for free. You just go to success.org/SOH for State of the Heart, and just fill in the form, download it, and you'll get the full report in ebook. It's a little ebook, and I hope you'll share it. And thank you all for watching the webinar.